Oh yeah, honey, we gonna get messed up tonight.
Just say no. This video is titled as it is because it's the drug talk I would give my own children. I'll be giving you a brief explanation of my Indiana public school drug education, then a breakdown of drugs that were common enough where I grew up. But first, this video exists for the purposes of education and harm reduction. I do not condone or encourage drug abuse, legal or illegal. No single video is an end-all be-all for your drug education. You are responsible for keeping you informed. Teenage pregnancy has something in common with drug addiction. Without being informed and acting on accurate information, you can easily become a statistic of either. The drug education I received in public school was a combo meal of just say no, dry statistics, and scare tactics. To me, just say no was an incomplete statement. It functioned a lot more like we just say no to education. And in case you forgot, human beings will do things that are detrimental to themselves just because you told them to do something different. In public school, alcohol and nicotine were functionally put on a pedestal. Not intentionally, but their flaws and issues were taken much less seriously, simply because they aren't illegal and evil. Meanwhile, every substance under the banner of currently illegal had every potential downside amplified. The fact that these things were happening at the same time gave me the following intuition. Self-education is an absolute necessity if you're going to try anything. Because even as a dummy teenager, I wasn't completely convinced that legal drugs were the safest or even the most beneficial substances. In school, there were a couple camps of kids I saw that avoided learning more. Camp 1 completely abided by the law, ranging from being completely straight edge to ruining their liver and lungs weekly, just because, what the hell, liquor and smoke's illegal. Camp 2 felt misled about illegal drugs because they partially were, but they wound up trying them without knowing anything about them. The second camp is almost to be expected. If you're uninformed but lied to about moderately safe illegal drugs, you might assume you're being lied to about others that would actually ruin your life. Moral of the story, do your own research. Even if you're a straight edge, sober living kind of person, it's still beneficial to be informed about drugs. You might never try anything, but being able to give someone the right piece of information, just because you happen to have it, you could save someone from ruining their life or straight up killing themselves. A good starting place for self-education on drugs is arrowid.org. All the links I talk about today, by the way, are going to be in the description. You click it. Again, just because you don't plan to do drugs doesn't mean you shouldn't know anything about them. What you see as arbitrary information could very well save somebody else's life. If you're stupidly never going to research anything for yourself, I got a couple drug categories for you. They are can kill you and won't kill you. Pretty hard to comprehend, eh? And remember, just because I don't mention a drug doesn't mean you shouldn't know anything about it. Do your own research. I think I'm sensing a pattern. Movie magic. Bam. Yeah. Can kill you. Let's start with those legal lads. Alcohol. That's right, everybody's favorite social lube, puke juice, has risks. Moderation's safe enough, but just remember that alcohol ain't completely harmless. When I was working at a ski lodge, a kid got so plastered, he straight up went into seizures. And they had to pump some charcoal into his belly so he could puke it back up. Lovely. Yeah, that's not an achievement. That's an overdose. Also, alcohol is strange, kind of like benzodiazepines, Xanax and whatnot, because the withdrawal itself from intense use can actually kill you. No bueno. Numero dos. Tobacco/nicotine. Nicotine's a mild stimulant and life shortener. So, yeah, if you feel like you're going to live a little long, vape niche, bruh! It'll usually wipe you out with cancer, heart attack, strokes. That good. If that's not attractive enough for you, it's way more addictive than it should be. According to a 1987 New York Times article, it's harder to kick than heroin. Maybe? I wouldn't know. Ain't doing heroin. Wait a second. Is that a segue? Opiates. Some opiates are codeine, morphine, Demerol, fentanyl, oxycodone, hydrocodone, Vicodin, heroin, and I really shouldn't have to say this, but opium. Yeah, if you're smoking opium, you're not a quirky hipster. You got a dope problem. Opiates are pretty easy to overdose on. Just look at your heroes. Something that makes dangerous drugs even more risky is the fact that they're illegal, by the way. What do I mean by this? Since illegal drug users are stuck dealing with a black market, there's little way for them to know what the purity or potency of a substance is. And know that addicts are going to find what they want, regardless of legality. Alright, shake delusion thought experiment time. If illegal drugs were legal and regulated, addicts would be less likely to overdose because they know the exact contents of what they're buying. Taxes generated from drugs should be put towards rehabilitation and education. Doing so would help heal current drug abusers, and accurately informing the public would decrease the likelihood of future abuse. I know this sounds fairly counterintuitive, but for those who disagree, know this sidetrack is almost over. Before I re-rail, think about where we are at the moment. Government boondoggles have been losing this war against inanimate objects. You own your own body and what you can choose to put into it, less than ever. The risks that the war on drugs imposes on drug dealers has only made the drugs they trade in even more valuable. It's my belief that the way to win the war on drugs is to end it. Regulation would be a mighty fine way to undermine dealers, gangsters, cartels. You know, we've done this before. See the prohibition of alcohol. Hell, this video was filmed in the middle of the 2020 coronavirus pandemic. It really shouldn't be that hard for us to grasp the fact that hitting things in the wallet is gonna hurt. I'm done now. All that's another video completely, but it's very relevant. Beyond the overdose risk of opiates, they're also extremely addictive. And to top it off, they have horrible withdrawal symptoms. Think worst flu a human could have, plus the feeling of all my bones are continuously breaking. Just check out people documenting their withdrawal on YouTube. Good times. Now for benzodiazepines, aka benzos, which are Xanax, Valium, Klonopin, many more. This that Eminem business. They're addictive, there's overdose potential, and to repeat what I said earlier, parallel with alcohol, withdrawal from intense use can actually kill you. Stimulant time. Amphetamines, which are meth, Adderall, many others. You can look these up yourself, by the way. You're looking at me on the internet. Meth is extremely addictive, and some people actually wind up getting hooked because they honk up a line of it after being told it was coke. Whoa. Illegality leaves you dealing with unscrupulous people. Lovely. Shout out to Jessa Reed, by the way.
Started eating meth with a spoon out of the bag because doing actual meth just became a technicality to manufacturing meth piss.
Meth can cause permanent psychological problems, strokes, heart attacks, fatal kidney and lung disorders, and worst of all, meth can ruin your pearly whites. Shout out to Tiger King Beefcake, by the way. The boy got himself some sexy new chompas. I love it when people's lives don't stay a living hell. Alright, obligatory funny sentence youth pandering time. Adderall is functionally fighting fire with fire by having kids with diet autism microdose meth in pill form. This being said, some people truly need it. I'm not knocking a proper and beneficial prescription. Just avoid popping pills, kids. Now for some of that jaw chalk. Cocaine, aka coke, ready rock, or if you're a fed boy, crack. Smoking cocaine and smoking crack are the exact same thing. Crack is just cocaine processed into a more easily smokable form. Actually, now that I think about it, there's a pretty big discrepancy between crack and cocaine. Legal charges for crack carry 18 times the jail sentence that cocaine charges do. But that's fair, right? That can't be designed to hook up the prison industrial complex. Big brother looking out for you, bruh. Needless to say, all forms of cocaine are very addictive, and it carries many of the risks that other stimulants do. You know, a stroke, heart attack, and there's this fun effect where if you snort enough, you know that little boy between your nostrils right there, you can burrow a hole through that shit with cocaine. Not good. Alright, that's all the can kill you drugs I'm going to talk about, and remember, if I don't talk about it, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It doesn't mean you should just go ham and IV some ketamine. Read. Do some research. Listen to stories from people that actually seem like they're trying to tell you what the drug truly does.
Beware listening to people with bad teeth.
Now for the list some people are going to see me as a boogeyman for. Won't kill you. Cannabis. Psychedelics. The greatest dangers about them are being caught with them while they're still illegal. A close second is the weight of having to integrate the experiences that they make you have. And that's a really close second, especially for psychedelics like psilocybin and DMT. Cannabis, aka pot, the devil's lettuce, that dirt nasty kush weed. Main psychoactive ingredient being tetrahydrocannabinol, THC. I'm not gonna lie to you, there's absolutely psychological addiction potential with cannabis. For some, that level of psychological addiction parallels cocaine addiction. And for those people, I would say that the majority of them have the problem with cannabis because that happened to be the drug that got there first. Functionally, there are 0 cannabis deaths that have happened for reasons other than an extreme allergy to it. You heard it here first, folks. That killer cabbage is as deadly as peanuts. Before this bit, remember that warning in the beginning. My life is not yours. Just because somebody on the internet did something, doesn't mean you should do it. In my experience, cannabis is like an infinitely more useful version of coffee. Smoke that'll kick me into gear to start working out, writing, editing, drumming, whatever I should be doing, but didn't have that little kick in the ass to make myself get up and do. Some people become couch potatoes with it. It might have to do with your inherent nature. I truly don't know. I'm naturally wired, so... For myself, I see perpetual cannabis use as being similar to perpetual coffee use. If you can't handle it, and it's a detriment to your day-to-day experience and life, you absolutely should not do it. If you can handle it, and it makes you more productive, or it makes life a little more pleasant every day, only a clueless dick is going to tell you otherwise. It's a shame that currently being a clueless dick.
It's the law.
Some people under the influence of cannabis have capacities that are completely indistinguishable from their sober capacities. It's much more comparable to nicotine when it comes to someone's functionality on it. And remember, if government tries to implement a hard and fast, just blanket THC breathalyzer, it's an attempt to incarcerate and generate revenue. Case in a couple points. An inexperienced smoker with an off-the-rails nicotine buzz shouldn't be driving. A cop should pull that unsafe driver over. Same with THC. Someone with nicotine experience and or tolerance has virtually unimpeded driving skills. If anything, they might be a little more focused on what they're doing in the moment. Cops should leave them alone. Same with THC. You'd be surprised how many people are in the closet about their cannabis use just because of the social stigma of being someone who smokes weed, bro. And the fact that unjust laws don't align with reality is a problem too, but social conforming is a good way to get people. It's annoying, but hey, people are getting less clueless every day. Eventually, you won't have to be in the closet at all about it. Everything I just said was just about smoked cannabis. Eaten, it acts much more like psychedelics because it's processed by your liver into a completely different substance than THC. Beyond the intoxications, the physical plant has countless uses. Since this is a substance video, I'm not going to go there. Just know that Popular Mechanics declared hemp the new billion-dollar crop in 1938, over 82 years ago. The story behind hemp and cannabis becoming illegal is its own can of worms. Before I talk about psychedelics, think about what caffeine, nicotine, and alcohol do to you. For caffeine and nicotine, your perception is slightly shifted, and you become roughly more energetic and focused. Alcohol is more something that blurs your perception and warps your motor skills. Psychedelics are different. Thinking about them in ways that you think about most other drugs doesn't encompass what you experience when you actually take them. And the term intoxication doesn't cover enough to be completely the right word for the psychedelic experience. They truly deserve to be called trips. Each psychedelic is more like its own self-contained flash drive of somewhat predictable experiences. Lost yet? Me too. They don't just temporarily warp your perception of reality. During a psychedelic trip, you endure experiences and trains of thought that most people die without having. Some trips feel like psychic hyperdimensional lectures, whatever that would mean to you. All I can say is that most people going cradle to grave without experiences of such certainty-shaking depth might not be such a good thing. Those prior statements all being true does not mean psychedelics are for everyone. Avoid them like the plague if you have any of the following: a frail hold on sanity, mental illness, or an ideology that you intend to die wholeheartedly believing. The last one only seems out of place if you mistake psychedelics for being like other drugs. After a night of getting drunk as hell, you may have killed your belief that you will ever drink again. After a meth binge, someone might believe an alien-controlled dog is making the sun follow you around town. The scariest thing about psychedelics is that they can't simply be disregarded as psychosis. For Carl Jung fans that don't already know about psychedelics, look into trip reports. They're very, very dreamlike and symbolic. I'll end this psychedelic preface with a slightly amended quote from the late great psychonaut Terence McKenna. Psychedelics are illegal, not because a loving government is concerned that you may jump out of a third-story window. Psychedelics are illegal because they dissolve opinion structures and culturally laid down models of behavior and information processing. They open you up to the possibility that everything you think you know is wrong. Lysergic acid diethylamide 25, LSD, acid. Beware, you have no clue what is on that little hippie stamp. There have been designer drugs like 25I NBOME going around for a while on those same exact kind of tabs. As of 2013-14, can confirm. Even if it happens to be LSD, without testing it, there's no way to know what the dosage of your tab actually is. That means you're stuck with the word of whoever sold it to you. And most dealers are dummies that don't think about these kind of things in numerical ways. You know, it's usually something along the lines of, "It'll get you good, bruh." There's no visible difference between a 100 microgram tab and a 1000 microgram tab. Is he saying micrograms? Is that right? Yeah, for a point of reference, a 200-pound person is going to know they took something at 80 micrograms. It's not going to send you through the moon, but yeah. The reason why people were losing their minds in the 60s is because the tabs often had insane dosages on them. And there were things like MK Ultra, where the CIA tried to see what personality shifts you could force in a human being by dosing them with LSD unknowingly. That's all I'm going to say about that. You got Google. Now for the experience. Every time, LSD is a 12-hour endeavor, minimum. Roughly an hour of come-up, 9 hours of primary trip, and during that time, your experience of intensity is actually waxing and waning. It doesn't grant you the mercy of consistency. Out of the blue, you may feel as sober as you were the day you were born. The next second, you and everyone tripping with you could be as high as that dose could possibly get you. At the end of a trip, you experience roughly 2 hours of come down. Some people experience an afterglow after the fact. Some don't. The greatest afterglow experience I've ever had was staring at a field after a trip, and I was crying because of the sheer beauty of this reality that we've been gifted the opportunity to occupy. And in case you forgot, this video exists for the purposes of education and harm reduction. I do not condone or encourage drug abuse, legal or illegal. I'm gonna make you listen to it again, you get the picture. Psychedelics, specifically the ones I'm about to talk about, are anti-addictive. It's a drug. It's gotta be addictive. No. If you before taking a dose over a certain threshold, the next time you consider taking it, your knees will be knocking from fear of memory of intensity. Movie magic. That wasn't there before. Psilocybin, magic mushrooms, shrooms, psilocybe cubensis, various other strains of psilocybe. Legitimately, the only way you could die eating mushrooms is if you confused a poisonous mushroom for shrooms. Shrooms are very strange and aren't understood at all. Related, psilocybin's effects are impacted by the psychological medications you may be taking, so do your own research. Don't be a dummy. No one wants to be reduced to a statistic. So, psilocybin's useful for treatment-resistant depression. I wonder what drug schedule psilocybin is at the moment. Schedule 1. That's gotta be the least horrible, right? Wrong. Schedule 1 drugs are defined as drugs with high potential for abuse or drugs that have no recognized medical uses. Check out that wording. Abuse. Whatever the powers that be do not want used will label any use as abuse. No recognized medical uses. This means they will not acknowledge anything that clashes with whatever they say. Shout out to the MAPS program for doing good psychedelic research work in this dark age. Back to the ignored truths. People that have incapacitating cluster headaches, also known as suicide headaches, find rare solace in psilocybin use. Studies by Johns Hopkins University have shown that psilocybin will also relieve death anxiety in the terminally ill. You think you're afraid of death? Imagine being terminal, actually being faced with your mortality every day. Any second you could go. Psilocybin helps with that crippling anxiety. Sounds mighty medicinal to me. The medical benefits of magic mushrooms can't touch the weirdness of what I'm about to tell you. Taking a heroic dose, which is 5 dried grams, in silent darkness, you run into non-physical entities that you can communicate with. Not the same thing as meth psychosis. I repeat, there are entities on the other side of a chemical doorway. We have whatever senses you care to count: sight, smell, hearing. Are you convinced that the sensing faculties that the human body has have the capacity to detect everything that exists in our reality? If so, tell me when you start picking up radio waves. No, for real though, because odds are by now there's a way to beam some madness into somebody's head. Who knows? Back to the non-physical entities that are just as conscious as you and I. Bet you didn't think you'd hear that in a substance video. For the religious watching, they aren't evil, they aren't demons, and if you're having a horrible trip, there may be some really hard lessons that you're refusing to learn. Because, for many, we refuse what clashes with current belief. but that's just been my experience. These entities tend to be playful, have a sense of humor, and want to communicate with you. They're playfully referred to as gnomes or machine elves. The strangest thing about that death anxiety study I mentioned is the fact that low psilocybin doses don't have the therapeutic effect. It's the talking to God dose that relieves death anxiety. Almost forgot. There are also studies showing that psilocybin is beneficial for smoking cessation. Add links down there as well. Now for the last substance I'm going to talk about, dimethyltryptamine. DMT, there's NN-DMT, 5-MeO-DMT, but I'm just going to generalize. I saved DMT for last because it's the safest and strangest on either list. DMT is a Schedule I substance that's naturally produced by the human body. That's right. Take them all away, ossifers. Hell, arrest yourselves. Every human being watching this is piloting a Schedule I drug factory. Maybe it's time to reassess drug scheduling when your own body is illegal. Never mind the fact that Hebrew scholar Benny Shannon actually believed that the biblical burning bush that Moses dealt with was actually acacia, which is rich in DMT. That's right, possibly the most important sacrament is illegal and naturally produced by many living things. I understand the purpose, symbolic and otherwise, of wine being used as a sacrament, but I promise you that DMT makes wine seem like a watery insult to the word sacrament. If one were to think about psilocybin as a telephone line to God, angels, hyperdimensional entities, whatever they are, then DMT is a teleporter to their realm. When smoked, the DMT state lasts only 15 minutes in our space-time. This is probably because it's familiar to our body and it has an idea of how to process it. The DMT experience is a brief journey to a different slice of reality. That experience cannot be accurately put into words. Not because you feel too high. You feel exactly the same. Your state of perception doesn't change. Where you're perceiving, if where is even the right word, is completely different. There's an absolute reality swap out. You genuinely feel transported somewhere else. And everything that's happening on the other side of that experience bears such little resemblance to the reality that we usually occupy that you can't completely describe it. Imagine growing up as an Eskimo. You have 50 words for different types and states of snow. Put that Eskimo into a desert. His words are nothing. They're useless. They don't help. Tundras and deserts have more recognizable resemblance than our reality in the DMT state. On top of the sheer alienness of it, there's so much happening and so many truths about the nature of reality and existence being thrown at you that you can't possibly retain it all. Sometimes at the end of a trip, the entities that you inevitably deal with will turn to you and wave, "Deja vu, deja vu." I could go into what I think that means, but this is a substance video. I don't want it getting any weirder than it already is. And after you experience the impossible, you return to your body. And that experience begins to float away from you, just like a dream. Natives in the Amazon rainforest have had a DMT-based brew for thousands of years, and they refer to the entities on the other side of that experience as ancestors. What? Seems like timeless dudes in loincloths picked a better sacrament than the church. That's all, folks. The most important takeaway you could get from this video is that the classification of psychedelics being as dangerous as heroin is outright criminal. Psychedelics are a completely different caliber and type of thing, not even close to being the same thing. To think of or just use psychedelics as some good time drug is pathetically wrong. They have medical utility that current science and medicine can't touch. They have mystical properties that make priests seem unnecessary. Because why have a middleman between you and ultimate truth if you could just go experience that thing on your own time? And I've said everything that I've said today as someone who was an absolute hardline atheist. Tryptamine psychedelics make you realize there is more than material. To reiterate, these lists aren't everything that exists. Do your own research. Remember that everyone's body and mind are different. We all have a different genetic roll of the dice. For someone with the right heart problems, a single cigarette could wipe you out. If you unlucked out and have mental illness in your family, the psychedelic stereotype that they will permanently drive you into madness could very well come true. Do your own research. Thanks for watching. I knew this had to be my first actual video because do I have some stories for you. I've been Shake Delusion. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, at Shake the Five Dusts. And if you get a wild hair up your arse and want to make it so I can keep eating, we're on Venmo as well, at Shake Delusion. Much love from the Shake namesake, and do your own